It was a warm afternoon when Alice stumbled upon the patch of mushrooms. She was wandering through the woods, as she often did, escaping from the confines of her home and the suffocating expectations of her family. At 16, Alice was brimming with curiosity and rebellion, seeking adventure in places her mother had repeatedly told her not to go. This particular day, the woods felt different, darker, more mysterious, even though the sun was still high in the sky. The shadows seemed to dance at the corners of her vision, and a strange energy pulsed through the air. It was then, as she navigated through the underbrush, that she spotted them, odd, vibrant mushrooms clustered around the base of a crooked tree. The mushrooms were unlike anything she'd seen before. Their caps were an iridescent blue, speckled with white dots, shimmering slightly as if reflecting a light that wasn't there. Alice crouched down, captivated. She reached out a hand and plucked one from the earth, holding it up to her nose. A pungent, earthy scent filled her nostrils, and for reasons she couldn't quite explain, she felt an overwhelming urge to taste it. Alice had heard whispers at school, stories of kids experimenting with strange plants, mushrooms that could make you see things, make you feel things, open your mind to whole new worlds. She had never dared before, but the allure of the unknown was irresistible. Just one bite, she whispered to herself, her fingers trembling with excitement and fear. What could it hurt? She brought the mushroom to her lips, taking a small bite from the edge of the cap. The taste was bitter, almost metallic, but she chewed and swallowed anyway. For a moment, nothing happened. The world remained the same, silent woods, chirping birds, and the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. But then the ground beneath her seemed to sway. The trees around her began to warp, bending and twisting like liquid. Her heart raced as her vision blurred, her surroundings melting into a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes. The world she knew began to slip away. When Alice opened her eyes again, she was no longer in the woods. She stood in the middle of a twisted, surreal landscape, one that resembled something out of a dream but felt distinctly wrong. The sky was a deep, sickly shade of purple, and the ground beneath her feet was soft and spongy, as though she were standing on the surface of some grotesque organism. Ahead of her stood a strange figure, a man, or something resembling a man, dressed in a patchwork of garish colors. His grin stretched impossibly wide, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. His eyes were wild, darting around erratically, never quite meeting hers. "Welcome, Alice," he said, his voice lilting, each word dripping with malice. "We've been waiting for you." Alice stumbled back, her heart pounding in her chest. What is this place?" The man laughed, a high-pitched, unsettling sound. "Wonderland, of course. Don't you recognize it?" Alice shook her head, panic rising within her. This wasn't the whimsical wonderland she had imagined from childhood stories. This was something much darker, more twisted. She turned to run, but the ground beneath her feet shifted, pulling her down like quicksand. The man laughed again, louder this time, his voice echoing in the distorted landscape. "You're not going anywhere, Alice," he taunted. "You've already fallen too far." As Alice struggled to free herself from the grip of the shifting earth, the world around her continued to warp and twist, each step pulling her deeper into a nightmare. Strange, misshapen creatures crawled out from the shadows, some with too many eyes, others with limbs bent at unnatural angles. They whispered her name in eerie unison, their voices slithering across her skin like cold fingers. She ran, or tried to, her legs heavy and slow as if moving through molasses. Ahead, she spotted a large house, a grand, crumbling mansion with windows that seemed to watch her as she approached. Desperate for escape, she pushed through the rotting wooden doors and stumbled inside. The house was worse. Inside, the walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting like the lungs of some unseen beast. A thick, oppressive fog filled the air, making it hard to breathe. Strange whispers echoed from every corner, disembodied voices calling her name, promising her things she didn't want to hear. "Come with us, Alice," they whispered. "We'll show you everything. We'll give you what you desire." Alice shook her head, her vision spinning. "I don't want any of this," she murmured, backing away from the voices. Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared before her, a tall, elegant woman in a gown made of shimmering black silk. Her face was obscured by a mask, her eyes hidden behind dark veils, but her presence exuded an overwhelming sense of authority. The queen, Alice breathed, recognizing her from the stories, but this queen was nothing like the one she'd read about as a child. This queen was cold, menacing, her gaze piercing through the veil. "You foolish girl," the queen said, her voice like ice. "You think you can escape here? Wonderland is not a place you leave. It consumes you, devours you whole." Alice trembled, her legs threatening to give out beneath her. "I don't belong here," she whispered. The queen's lips twisted into a cruel smile. "You chose to come here, Alice. You took the bite. You brought this upon yourself." Alice's mind raced, fragments of reality slipping further away. "No," she whimpered. I just wanted to explore." The queen laughed, the sound like shattering glass. "You wanted more than that. You wanted what was forbidden. And now, you will pay the price." The ground beneath Alice began to crack, the floor splitting apart, revealing a gaping abyss. The mansion trembled, the walls shaking as if the very fabric of this nightmarish world was unraveling. Alice backed away, her heart pounding in her chest, but the cracks followed her, spreading across the floor with terrifying speed. "You can't run from Wonderland, Alice," the queen's voice boomed. "There is no escape." Alice ran through the distorted landscape, the twisted forest closing in on her. The ground beneath her feet pulsed with a sickening rhythm, like the heartbeat of a living, breathing monster. She didn't know where she was going, there was no direction, no sense of up or down in this warped world. All she knew was that she had to keep moving. Behind her, the creatures whispered, their voices rising in a haunting chorus. "She's ours," they chanted. "Alice belongs to Wonderland." Alice's mind was unraveling. Her memories of the real world, of the woods, of her family, of her home, felt like distant echoes, fading away with each passing moment. She was trapped in this nightmare, lost in a world that twisted and contorted with her every step. And then, suddenly, the ground gave way beneath her. Alice fell, plummeting into darkness. The world above vanished, swallowed by the void. She screamed, her voice lost in the emptiness as she tumbled through the abyss. When she finally hit the ground, it was soft, almost comforting. She lay there, gasping for breath, her body trembling with fear and exhaustion. And then she opened her eyes. She was back in the woods. The familiar trees loomed overhead, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden light over the forest floor. For a moment, Alice thought she had imagined it all, the twisted landscape, the queen, the creatures. But then she saw the patch of mushrooms beside her, the same iridescent blue caps she had bitten into what felt like an eternity ago. Her head throbbed, and her body felt heavy, as though she were weighed down by something unseen. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't move. Panic surged through her, her heart pounding in her chest. And then, she realized why. Her body wasn't moving because it was no longer alive. Alice's lifeless body lay sprawled in the dirt, her skin pale and cold. Her eyes were open, staring blankly up at the darkening sky. A young couple, out for a walk, stumbled upon her body hours later. The woman screamed, dropping to her knees beside the girl. Her boyfriend knelt down, his face grim, as he checked for a pulse. There was none. The paramedics arrived soon after, but there was nothing they could do. Alice's death was ruled an overdose, a tragic end for a curious girl who had wandered too far into the unknown. As the coroner zipped up the body bag, he glanced back at the patch of mushrooms glistening in the fading light.